So waiting for a beep. There we go. Well, good afternoon. This is Gary Forsey, and with me is the Vice Chair of the Board of Curators, Judy Haggard, who filled in ably this week for Chair Frazier. And with that, we'll be glad to take your questions. If you could identify, for our purpose, your affiliation, that would be most helpful.
This is Adam Van Horn. I'm with the Raleigh Daily News. I was wondering, President Forsey, when it comes to the Senate bill that's being discussed now, how confident are you the Senate will pass the level funding for next year?
Well, I think given the opportunity that was presented with keeping tuition flat in exchange for an agreement to hold state appropriations to the 2009 funding level, that was certainly a cornerstone of the governor's proposed budget this year. And with the federal stimulus money that has requirements to maintain funding at the 2009 level, in order to draw federal stimulus money, I'm very confident right now that that provision will in fact sustain through the budget process in the Senate.
Hi, this is Alan Zager at the AP, and the question on my mind and everyone else in the state of Missouri and probably Detroit too is, did the curators sign off on Mike Anderson's contract, new contract?
Yes, they did, and pleased to report that, as has been previously reported this week, the contract is a 7-year contract with a guarantee amount of $1.35 million for a coach that deserves this recognition because of performance and the performance of the team and the positives that have been conveyed to the state and to the university as a result of that. And Curator Haggard may have something to say about that as well. But yes, this is confirming that the curators have signed off on that agreement, and obviously subject to final approval, which will occur as we get the documents to the various parties for signature.
Was that a unanimous vote, President Forsey?
Yes.
Yes, it was, actually.
Great.
President Forsey, Nathan Winters with Columbia Missourian. Do you have any information or details on what part of his contract will be actually from the system and what parts will be from like the athletic department, donors, et cetera? What part is going to be his base salary that the UM system will pay into?
The entire amount comes from the athletics department. The general revenues that come from the campus to support athletics is a relatively small percentage, less than 10% of the total athletics department's budget, principally an amount that has been supported by the campus to pay off debt financing charges. So by and large, although not in total, by and large, athletics is supported by donors, by athletic events, ticket prices, and so forth. So this doesn't change that dynamic. To the extent coaches' contracts go up or down, then they are supported and, generally speaking, self-funded within athletics, except for a couple of exceptions. I think that total amount supported by the campus is $2.2 million, the bulk of which comes in the form of debt service, given the construction program that's occurred on the campus over the years. Nothing about this will change that. There will be no other requirement from general revenues or from the campus. The athletics will continue to provide that additional support required.
So then, is any part of his contract then that is coming into from the UM system office paying it, or is it all from donors, or is it all going to be funded by donors?
Well, again, the athletic department, their total budget of $60-some million, a very small percentage of that comes from state appropriations, if you will. So there's nothing that's coming from the system, and no additional amount, from the campus in that regard. So you're trying to reframe your question a bit. The athletic department is, in essence, self-funding, except for $2.2 million, the bulk of which is to provide debt service. So nothing about that dynamic has changed. To the extent that increases in coaches' contracts require athletics to find other sources of revenue, then that'll be a task that they'll have to undertake, perhaps.
Gary, Mike DeArmond, Kansas City Star.
Hey, Mike.
Hey, can you tell me if the particulars, the generalities of how much money that Mr. Anderson gets in terms of radio and TV and whatnot, the extras are much the same as in the previous one, and that the guarantees are mainly went up, or are there other changes?
Mike, I think the athletics department, will release the specifics of the contract, excuse me, once it's been fully executed. But I think what you will see is a general ratcheting up of the guarantee categories, as well as some ratcheting up of the incentives. So it's not exactly proportionate, but I think to reflect the increase from his former guarantee of $855 to $1.35. There's a general ratcheting up, and as we had previously indicated, there is a $200,000 amount that is put into a deferral account, if you will, that will be accessible in two tranches, one at the end of 4 years and one at the end of 7 years. So that is a different category and a new amount. But generally speaking, to your question, both categories of the guarantee as well as the incentives are somewhat proportionally ratcheted up, if that gets to your question.
Yes, follow-up to that. Obviously, there are going to be some people that say, in fact, they're all over the country, say, how can you pay a coach this amount of money? Was that anything that was a hard point of discussion, or was this just generally accepted as the way you have to do business these days?
Well, Mike, I think a couple of points. First, as I've already mentioned, in this particular case, we had a program that is doing it the right way. We have a coach that is incredibly well respected and wants to make Missouri and make the University of Missouri his home for the long period. So that was a very significant factor. Certainly there is nationally the market, if you will, and we were certainly aware as we had contemplated contract extension of what that market may be as we were considering a contract extension, over the past few months actually. So the market nationally, was a framework, and certainly as you think about that, then when you have a coach that's performing in a program that has significantly improved with our student athletes on and off the court, then you want to do whatever you can in that context to keep your own, if you will, as opposed to watching something else convey. And I think, the third point is whether it's a well-performing coach in this case or a high-performing faculty or staff member, even in the toughest of economic times, we've got to find a way of supporting our mission of the university of teaching, of research, and economic development and service. And I think we have a record, and I'm very vocal about finding resources to support retention, recruitment of those that even in the toughest time need to be recognized for that. So I think that is a balance and something that I'm very well aware of. And obviously we've had to take some tough economic decisions this year, and those won't go away in the near future. And probably the final point is, as we've already talked, within our athletics program, a very high percentage of the funding for athletics comes from within, whether that's from donors, whether it's from tickets and other auxiliaries within the athletics department. So while there certainly is the framework against which we're all operating today in a tough economic time, athletics certainly has to continue to sustain and grow its base of support. And obviously with high-performing teams, which we have at Mizzou, we hope that can continue to occur.
Thank you.
You bet.
President Forsey.
President Forsey, this is Murray Williams of the Kansas City Star.
Yes, Murray.
Excuse me, I came in a little late, so pardon me if this question has already been asked, but you were just talking about some tough economic decisions the university's having to make, and so I wanted to ask, have you guys considered basically a plan B or a B scenario for tuition in any event that, for whatever reason, the legislature cannot hold allocations to higher education at 2009 levels?
Well, Marie, as you know, we've taken planning, I think, to a whole new level within the university and trying to find ways of mitigating, a very complicated and unpredictable economic environment, and that includes continuing to constrain expenses, continuing to hold headcount. I conveyed this morning to the curators that we have 545 or so open positions today. So we're doing everything we can to hold back and, in fact, accrue some savings in the event that the economy doesn't turn around, or that in 2011 we're facing the same thing we've been facing in 2010. I think at this point in time I have a very high level of confidence because of the ability to use the federal stimulus dollars that, in fact, the agreement that we reached with the governor that has now passed through the House will convey to the Senate. That will, in fact, protect our 2009 funding level that will allow us to fulfill our part of the agreement, which would be maintain flat tuition. I have a increasingly high level of confidence. Certainly, if something happens, then we have, I think, taken a prudent step this year, which was to cut our budgets off of 2009 by 5%, and each of the chancellors went through how they've gone about doing that this morning. So we have built up, if you will, a reserve. Some of that would cause us to be able to operate then effectively in 2010. But beyond that, I think the key point is the House has taken action using the federal stimulus money that protects at the 2009 level. The governor certainly has indicated where he is, and there's no reason that we wouldn't expect the Senate to follow through as well.
Are you saying that regardless of what happens, that the stimulus money may be there to help bring you up to 2009 levels?
Yes, and that the House, as they constructed their budget, that is how they were able to do that.
I see. So no matter what happens, that you're holding to where you will hold tuition at 2009 levels, and you think that the university will be able to make it through, survive through 2010, regardless of what happens on the legislative side?
No, didn't say that.
Okay.
In fact, the resolution that the curators passed said that tuition would be held flat, assuming that the General Assembly approved the budget at the 2000.
Okay, so it's flat on a condition.
We did. We put a condition on it, but again, all the issues are lining up, and I fully expect that to happen.
Okay.
Okay? You bet.
President Forsey, this morning during your speech, you noted some reservations about the use of stimulus money to sort of backfill the budget for next year in terms of higher education. I was wondering if you could expand upon that a little bit.
Yeah, for those of you who may not have heard my comments this morning, I laid out a number of imperatives, including one that suggested that the state should be very careful about using all of the federal stimulus money in 2010, not only to backfill the budget, as we just talked about with Murray's question, but also for other one-time purposes that wouldn't allow us to have put a reserve in place for 2011 if the economy didn't improve and if the state were to be facing a shortfall in state revenues that could have had an impact on our operating budget in 2011. So I was encouraging some level of conservation of the stimulus money if, in fact, we were facing in a year and a half from now a continuation of a tough economy that wouldn't have allowed the state to recover for revenue. So it was encouraging that very specific issue.
Just one more question going back to Mike Anderson's contract. Can you address maybe just some of the concerns that have been displayed by some people around the state and in the higher education institutions of Coach Anderson getting a raise, and I know the funding sources aren't the same, but Coach Anderson getting a raise at the same time while there's a hiring freeze. And also it's been announced that there'll be no increases in salaries next year for faculty and staff. Just wondering if you could address maybe some of the concerns people have about just the principle of giving Coach Anderson a raise at this time while other people are not getting any raises at all next year.
Well, it'd be repetitive to go back over the 4 points that I made, but again, it is a matter of performance It's a matter of doing the very best we can in a tough economic time to, whether it's for a coach or whether it's for a high-performing faculty member or a staff member that we're trying to retain or recruit, we have to have the clarity, the strategy, the wisdom, if you will, to be sure we're doing the right thing for the long term for the university and for our state. So that's the action, and that's the framework that we have to think about all these considerations. And the coach has in a very short period of time proven and caused us to convey that kind of confidence in him, and conversely he is committed to us for the long period of time. And I think that is the right balance here that we tried to strike. But certainly, as I've stood up in front in town hall meetings and conveyed tough actions that were taken, I do understand that not everyone will appreciate the carefulness that the administration, the chancellor and the athletics director, myself and others, and the board, as we thought about this, we certainly take all of these perspectives into consideration. It's not done without those thought processes. Going once, twice.
President Forte, I just had one more question concerning the proposed contingency salary pool. I was wondering if either one of you could share your feelings on that proposal that will come before the board, I believe, in June.
Yes, we bring to the board in June our final budget, and what we proposed yesterday in the Finance Committee was that as we construct that final budget that we reserve 1%, which is about $10 million that can be used to perhaps Nathan's earlier question. When we have a retention issue, a promotion issue, a recruitment issue, that we have the flexibility in the context of a tough period of time to deal with those situations. And that's contrasted between what we had last year, which was the ability to have a salary pool that would have provided a more broad-based adjustment of 4.2%. We don't have that capability this year because of the state funding and obviously the decision that we're making on tuition to remain affordable and accessible for students. So that 1% is a contingency for very specific purposes. And yesterday that was recommended to the Finance Committee, will be part of the budget construct as we take that to the full board in June. At which point we will know the state appropriation. So we'll have these pieces lined up at that stage to be able to be dealt with. Any other questions from the phone before we bid you good day?
Yeah, Mr. Forsey, this is Josh Roney from the Man-Eater.
Yes, Josh.
And you mentioned, you sort of lumped in faculty with how important it is to retain coaches and things like that. And I know with Micah Anderson, funding comes from athletic revenue, but how would you go about retaining important faculty members?
Well, we just gave an example of that. In fact, the Chancellor in his report this morning to the board gave a couple of examples where we have to constantly look at allocation of resources and prioritization. So we're doing that within my office at the system level. I indicated this morning that we have cut our expenses by 25%. That would allow us to deal at the system level with unique situations that come across. The campuses have done that as well, so they have had to make budget decisions in order to maintain some flexibility in order to take care of those kind of situations. So the 1% that was just talked about is in the 2010 context, which gives us an amount to be able to use if we need to retain or recruit a faculty member or a staff member for that matter. So that's the reference point, that we need to not run our budgets down so tight that we can't make those adjustments as necessary. And again, as we took the resolution to the committee yesterday, it was very specific to faculty promotions, staff and faculty promotions and retention. And I guess I should add recruitment in there as well. Okay, thank you very much for being with us on a Friday afternoon, and thanks for your patience as we adjusted our schedule a bit here today. Thank you.